as truckers, we talk about the temporary foreign workers in Canada, and the Americans, they talk a lot about non-domiciled CDLs and asylum seekers taking their jobs. And quite honestly, if that concerns you, you need to understand there's something far more sinister on the horizon than a temporary foreign worker. All right, welcome to the Golden Belt Buckle Podcast. Appreciate you clicking this video. If you're new here and you like this content, you find it intellectually stimulating perhaps, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. So we're going to talk about the Kevinoleary and Tucker Carlson discussion about data centers, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the bigger picture, how it affects us as truckers, because really, as truckers, we talk about the temporary foreign workers in Canada, and the Americans, they talk a lot about non-domiciled CDLs and asylum seekers taking their jobs. And quite honestly, if that concerns you, you need to understand there's something far more sinister on the horizon than a temporary foreign worker devaluing you or an asylum seeker taking your job. What's on the horizon is going to take everybody's job if it works out the way these tech giants want to. So we're going to get into that a little bit. So Tucker Carlson and Kevinoleary, they had a debate. And I didn't really see it as a debate. I just saw it as two men coming at a topic from, highly educated men, coming at a topic from a different perspective, having a civilized discussion. Tucker Carlson was taking the position of the average working person, and Kevinoleary was being Kevinoleary. He was the cold-hearted, realist capitalist who is just a football player on the field of capitalism, and he plays in reality, doesn't make the rules, he just does what he has to do. And, you know, for all that they disagreed about, you know, we can get into all they disagreed about, but what they both seem to recognize is that we're stuck in a prisoner's dilemma. They didn't use that language, but that's really what we're stuck in, is a prisoner's dilemma. Because what's a prisoner's dilemma? It's if you stay the course, it's destruction. If you get off the course, it's destruction. That's what a prisoner's dilemma is. So you're trapped between two bad decisions that'll both lead to your ultimate destruction, right? And so they basically agreed we're on a prisoner's dilemma for two reasons. Number one, if you don't pursue this technology, someone else will. And then the second reason is because it may not be profitable yet, but it's useful. And Kevinoleary said all 11 sectors of the economy are saying that this technology is drastically helping their business. So on those two bases alone, it's not going anywhere. So as far as the competition, it's like China. They're saying China. Whoever takes this technology and they perfect it, they are going to be the most technologically advanced civilization going into the future. They're going to, therefore, on that basis alone, they're going to have the most advanced economy, and they're going to have the most bargaining power, the most leverage in the future, right? Which makes perfect sense. So on that basis, Kevinoleary says we can't get off this track. We have no choice. And then Tucker Carlson, you know, he pointed out the irony. It's all this. It's AI technology that helps allow the Chinese government to spy on their citizens. And so, in the spirit of a country where they believe in autonomy, they believe in privacy, the irony is to combat China and stay competitive, they have to develop the same technology, which will probably end up being used to surveil their own citizens, which will make them more like China, right? That was the irony of it, right? And that's the prisoner's dilemma, right? You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And then, you know, the second point about it being useful to business, well, you think about it. If you didn't want to use an automobile to deliver freight because you like the horse and buggy, you thought it'd put the blacksmith out of business, and everybody associated with, you know, raising horses, maybe ranchers, or, you know, that economy. Well, that's fine. You could keep delivering freight with horse and buggies, but you're going to be out of business, right? You're not going to be able to keep up with the modern economy, which is motorized vehicles, right? And so it's the same thing with AI, right? I use AI a lot, actually, and it saves a lot of time, right? It does. So businesses are finding it useful, therefore they're using it. And in the transportation world, if you watch my podcast any length of time, I've said before, the goal with AI and automation is to have everything in the transportation sector communicate with each other and be automated as much as possible. So in other words, right now everything's fragmented. Right, you might have the shipping container company on the sea. They're not communicating with the trucking company on land. They communicate with the port, but they don't communicate with the trucking company. Right, the trucking company doesn't communicate with the rail company. Right, not as much as they should. So the warehouse doesn't communicate with the trucking company or the rail company as much as they could or should, right? And even actually the freight that's on the truck doesn't communicate with the truck. The truck itself doesn't communicate with the truck. Because if the truck itself communicated more with the truck, then maybe it would know it has a hot tire, it needs to pull off and go get repairs. Maybe it would know there's a problem with the refrigeration in the freight, so it needs to go to a repair shop so that they don't spoil the whole load. And so you see where we're going with this, where everything from the vehicle itself to its destination, everything, the goal is to have everything integrated so everything works efficiently. Modern business is about eliminating choke points, eliminating bottlenecks, because bottlenecks, they produce friction. Friction leads to longer lead times or wait times for the freight. So the goal is to get rid of as many choke points as possible. You know, it's funny, I go to a customer and, you know, I get talking to them and they'll tell me, I had one guy tell me, you know, we like using you guys because you streamline everything, right? You make life easier for us. And that's the whole point of a modern economy, is to streamline everything. So where do data centers? All right, sorry, I got interrupted right there, so I had to restart the video. So where was I? If the goal is to make the economy 100% efficient, if the goal is to reduce congestion, bottlenecks, choke points, to streamline everything, well, that's where data centers come in, because it's one thing to have one truck going down the road, right? They can already do that. They have all the sensors they need to get the load safely from point A to point B. But it's another thing if you want to optimize an entire fleet and make that entire fleet efficient. That's where data centers become the backbone of everything. Because as a truck goes down the road, as a plane flies through the sky, or a freighter floats on the sea, or a shunt truck drives around the shipper's yard, you've got information being sent to these data centers. That's what it'll be. The information would be going to these data centers, and these data centers will be taking all the information that's coming from all of these different areas, and it would be churning it around, and it would be determining what's the best way to route these trucks, or when is the best time to do preventative maintenance on these trucks? You know, how can we save fuel, right? How can we make the load go quicker? Basically, the whole point will be to make everything more efficient, right? And to do that, you need an enormous amount of computations, right? You can just imagine how much data is going to be used. So that is the goal, and that, like I said, that's far more threatening, at least to me, than a temporary foreign worker taking my job, right? Right now, the annoyance we have in 2026 is that temporary foreign workers or asylum seekers, they flood the market and they devalue us as drivers. That's our biggest concern. Going forward later on, the biggest concern is no one will have a job, right? Because people are annoying. People need to be managed. If you can get human beings out of the equation, everything becomes much more efficient. So that's what I think is coming. What can we do about it? Not much, but we can, if you're a young person watching this and you actually want to make a career out of trucking, then here's my suggestion. In Canada right now, we've started our 10-year project. I think it ends in 2036, August 2036 or 2035. Right now, we are testing autonomous vehicles on certain roads I think it's in Ontario. I'm not sure if that's federal. I can't remember if it's federal or if it's province by province. But it's a 10-year study at the moment. And the trucks that they're testing are just regular trucks. They're not testing lift axles. They're not testing flatbeds or B trains or A trains or hoppers or anything like that. They're not testing anything specialized, not oversized, just regular. It's basic of the basic, right? Like down south, they're doing 53-foot trailers. They're delivering regular general freight. Well, that's what we're testing right now. So if you know that there's 10 years between now and when that happens, the best thing you can do, I believe, if you're a young driver, probably wouldn't matter for me. I only got about 10, 15 years left. But if you're a young driver, you know this transition is probably going to happen. I believe it will happen. I would say the best thing you would do is get as many skills as you possibly can. Don't just learn how to do dry van. Get on with a company that's going to teach you something that's a little bit more specialized than dry van. Learn how to do a lift axle. Learn how to operate a flat or run a flatbed. Learn how to chain your loads. Learn how to do roll off. Learn as much as you possibly can. Because those are not going to, from what I can see, those aren't going to be replaced anytime soon. Now, I believe at some point they will be. I hear people say, well, this can't happen because of this. Like, you got all these armchair experts sitting there acting like none of this is going to happen, when literally at every turn they're solving problems, right? There are very smart people coming up with solutions on how to screw you. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the debate. Those are my thoughts on where it's going. I know there's a lot of contradictions. I know there's supply chain issues with these data sets. I get it. But I think it's going to happen at some point. Not in our lifetime. Much of this is already happening, but I think that it's a transition. It's going to go well beyond our lifetime. And in fact, one final thought. I think what I can see in all this, I actually think that the future, if this was to happen, if this actually happens the way these visionaries are envisioning, right now, what we are in 2026, we are going to be to our future our future progeny, what people with horse and buggies are to us today, right? They don't look very advanced. We're going to look like we live in the Stone Ages, from what I can see is coming. So anyways, that's the video. That's what I got. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about all this? Till next time, cheers, keep the rubber side down.